I want to hold on. I am going live on Instagram, folks. So hold on. I'm doing it as we speak. It's going to be amazing. Everyone's going to love it.
I think this is how you can tell that Lane's a boomer.
I'm not a boomer, you know. Oh, am I live?
Yeah, you're already live.
It says you
No,
are.
I mean on No, we're live. I'm looking for Instagram. Oh, I have to edit. Let me edit it. Sorry, I was cooking. Oh, that's from. I know who that's from. Oh, stream key. I want to edit it, yo. Oh, remove this destination. Move.
I have High School Musical stuck in my head.
Do you really?
Yeah.
How come?
I don't know. Just is. Yesterday was Cardi B.
Was it?
Yeah.
Copy the stream key. Okay, so I should be live. All right, I'm live on Instagram. All right, what's up, everyone? Tobias Literary Agency. What's up, Sacramento? Ask us questions. Oh, our guest Natasha Morris is here. So, okay, we're live on Instagram. Cool. Are you guys going to sing for us? Anne, are you going to sing for us?
Sorry, hold on. My earbuds aren't working. I might have to switch my technology.
And
what did you
have
say?
To come prepared.
I thought I could try something new. I'm sorry. I don't know.
I'm sorry. Are you guys going to sing for us?
No.
What are we singing?
No.
I don't know. Stan Yan.
Stan.
No.
Anne was very hurt because I said she couldn't sing.
So sad.
I am a classically trained singer.
Are you really?
Yeah, who deliberately sings bad on purpose because I just do not want to be stuck.
So.
And we can't hear you. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
he was. I'm not live.
No, he's saying that because he wants us to talk ish about people, I assume, because it says we're live.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're live. It's Steve Shelton. So Natasha, are you gonna sing for us? Because if you're classically trained, that's like super duper cool.
No, that's not happening. The last time I sang where anybody else could hear it, I was 21, and it was the Arkansas Symphony, and it's not happening ever again.
What happened?
I just, from kindergarten through college, you burn out.
Yeah. I was in the choir in high school, and I loved it. And I basically got driven out because the teacher said I feigned enthusiasm. And I was like, why would I fake being excited about your class? I was like, all right. So if I had someone else, I might be a famous actor right now. Or I could be on Broadway. Who knows? Okay, so people aren't asking comments. Ask comments. Ask questions. The wheels on the bus. Oh, that's Steve Shelton.
Well, I mean, technically, we could ask each other questions until people come.
Okay. That's a good question. Oh, here's Sean Faust. Why can we only submit questions through YouTube? Real question. What are y'all reading right now? I actually don't know why you can only submit questions through YouTube. I'm trying to figure it out, and I didn't know until someone else pointed it out to me.
I'm just a special guest, so I wouldn't know any of this technical stuff anyways.
Yeah, exactly. What are we reading? What is everyone reading? That's a good question. Natasha, why don't you start off? You're the guest.
I am just starting the third book in Holly Jackson's Good Girl Guide to Murder. The TV show's coming out on August 1st. I'm doing that, and then I have some pre-orders that are spaced out to come for the rest of the year that I'm excited about. So,
Kelly.
I just, right before I got on here, finished West with Giraffes for my book club, my neighborhood book club. I'm reading On My Bedside Nicked by M.T. Anderson. And my middle grade read right now that's on my desk behind me is The Wild Robot, because I still have never read that, and they're making a movie out of that. So that's what I'm reading right now. And then like 3 manuscripts from clients in perspective.
Jacqui?
Yeah, I got a lot of manuscripts, so I'm reading a lot of those. But in published books, I'm just finishing Jamie Pacton's Absinthe Underground, and I am about to start, and now I'm forgetting the name of it, but V.E. Schwab's new, but what's that called? I mean, I have it on my Audible. It's Next Up. I can't remember the name of it.
I don't know anything about anything. Okay, on that note, Anne, what are you reading?
I just started Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. So I have that going. And then
I just finished that.
Did you just finish it?
I want the second one.
Okay, well, I just started the first one, so we can talk when I'm done with that. And I'm also reading the new Matt Haig, The Life Impossible, I think is what it's called, which comes out in September.
Cool. All right, next question. Anne, how was your Rosebud weekend?
Oh my gosh, it was fantastic. It was a great weekend. Have so many things to say about it, but overall, just everything was great, and the food was not terrible. There's a thing behind that, so we will. I can explain that later if you really want to know, but yeah, it was excellent. Lots of great camaraderie, and we did some classes, got a lot of writing done, a lot of just, connecting and stuff. So totally thrilled with the way the weekend went.
So who got killed and where did you hide the body?
So these are things I cannot discuss with you, Lane.
Right. At least not on live YouTube.
Correct.
All right, next question. Would anyone at your agency be willing to submit to small presses like Level Best Books? I don't know.
Wait, we can answer that question. I think the job really for agents is to get you into the bigger presses. A lot of small presses can be submitted to directly by authors. So really that's not really what we're here for. What we're mostly here for is to make sure we get you in front of big 5 editors and editors that authors don't generally have access to. So I don't think anyone's opposed to submitting to small presses. It's not a thing, but I don't think that's our ultimate goal.
I actually had this conversation with a client today because I was talking about something I had offered rep on that ended up going to a small press, and we were talking that the big 5 comes with the obligation of dealing with sales and editing, and that small presses more often than not are willing to take bigger risks.
You think small presses are willing to take bigger risks?
What did I say? Yeah, smaller presses are willing to take bigger risks.
Yeah, but then I think the flip side of that also is that at the end of the day, you're also running the risk, especially for awards. If you're published as a debut in a small press, you're running the risk of also losing out on certain awards because they may not necessarily have the reach and the ability to, it really depends on the small press. Not all small presses are created equal. And, you have to look at, if you're looking at a small press, like distribution, where is this book being distributed by? Like they just announced in Kidlit, Postwave is starting up here out of the US and the UK, and they're going to be distributed through Chronicles sales channels. And and Page Street is done through Macmillan. So I think it also, you have to look at where the distribution is. And then for a lot of us, it also comes down to money. A lot of writers want to be paid for their work. And if you're writing a 60,000, 70,000 word novel and you're getting like $1,000 after taxes and agency fees, is that really also worth the time investment? So it really just depends. It's a conversation, I think, with every person.
It would probably be a great conversation to have one day on Literary Lens.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it would be.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Writing that down for the future, Lane.
Someone write that down for the future, please, because we all know I'll forget. No matter where I write it down, it'll end up in the ether.
I'll put it in the Slack.
Yay, thank you. Howdy from Los Angeles. Howdy. Hey, I submitted a screenplay. You asked for the book proposal that the screenplay is based upon called Robbing. We're going to move on. I had a small press like a pitch from X. It's called Twitter, but they crowdfunded to publish. Seems dodgy. It's not my cup of tea, but I know some publishing houses do that. Like I know Robert Kirkman's, I forget the name of it. He has a publishing arm through, I think it might still be through Simon and Schuster, but they crowdfund their books. And I was just reading Natasha's Slack about the future pros and cons of small presses. So it could be dodgy, it could not be. I think
it's funny because when you said a pitch from X, I was like, oh, they're not telling you who. See, this is the problem with naming your company after a random letter of the alphabet. But we can also have another discussion on Literary Lens sometime about that if we wanted to.
Well,
Brandon Sanderson crowdfunded. Yes, he did crowdfund a series, but that's Brandon Sanderson.
And I've actually had clients crowdfund projects before, and I had this whole conversation with my mom about it, that a lot of it is also coming down to if you're only getting X amount of orders through your Kickstarter or whatever, is that also going to affect your pricing? Like there's a certain amount of pricing that comes from actually creating the item, whatever it is. And then, there are publishers that are like, oh, we're going to crowdsource, because then they can test the market and be like, okay, well, which book is going to make us more money? And that, like, there's a whole ecosystem there.
Wasn't that the whole premise of Swoon Reads when it was around?
Yeah, that it was like crowd up voting, and then the ones that are like the top rated got the publishing deal. Yeah. And stuff like that. And I think it didn't last. It post pandemic. It's not here.
I want to say that Wattpad
also
something similar to that as well.
Yeah. So, and it worked. I think crowdfunding works if you have like Cassie Clare, Brandon Sanderson, if you have the name brand recognition. But I think crowdfunding can backfire very easily as well if you don't. So
I know there's a publisher called Inkshares that I think you post the book and people vote on which one gets published. I don't know. My wife asked, how do partners of writers survive? She said she's kidding. She asked, is it quality over quantity to get into the industry, or is it numbers game in terms of query? I think the first question. I think the first question is the more important one. How do partners of writers survive? Very difficult. It's difficult. I want to say difficultly, but I'm not a certain someone and can't just make up words.
Oh, see, I'm the complete opposite. I'm dying over here laughing because you guys have all heard my whole pyramid structure rant during staff meetings.
I don't remember, to be honest.
Do you want me to go into my rant?
Yeah, go into your rant about pyramid, because now I'm curious.
So essentially, it is a bit of a numbers game. There is quality involved, but especially when I look at my particular list, it's like for me to have sales, which is the very top of the pyramid, I have to have projects on submission. To have projects on submission, I have to have projects from my clients. From projects from my clients, I have to have queries. From queries, I got it. Like, it's a whole structure. So it is a little bit of like, you have to meet your quality, but then it is also a numbers game of like, your future agent may not be an agent. Like, I was an editorial assistant before I became an agent. And then it varies. So like, it's I like to say publishing is a bit of luck meets preparation. So. Yeah,
I'm going to co-sign. And I think your agent too, because some agents don't have the contacts and the know-how. So I do like the pyramid, but I think I already forgot what Natasha, how she pitched it, but I would pitch it luck, skill, timing. Is luck and timing the same thing?
I mean, luck and timing and skill, like I would say those are all going into luck, and then but timing is also timing is also part of that preparation, like paying attention, seeing an announcement of, hey, a new agent, and being prepared in that moment to make that strike. And that was timing, but your preparedness brought you to that moment. So
right. I do think there's perseverance is maybe a part of that pyramid too. I would say perseverance, luck, and preparation.
I shout out to the best book, Grit by Angela Duckworth. Reading that book and learning that, like, hey, just because like a talented person and somebody with grit, like the person with grit can go farther than just the innate talent alone. That's a brilliant book.
It is.
I also want to address the first part of that question, which is you survive by providing lots of snacks and encouragement, and also have boxes of tissue on hand for when we cry, because inevitably we will cry. So
it's funny because he says my wife is very happy that y'all are laughing. Back to perseverance, though. I always tell people, and I repeat it now because people have told me it's a good thing to say, that the only difference between a published author and an unpublished one is persistence. And that didn't land. No one cares.
Well, I think I want to also put I'm such an old lady. I'm an old cat lady, but I want to put in a plug for quality here, because you can be persistent and not have the quality, right? So you can't forget that. Like, I agree with what everyone has said, but no one is going to pick up a debut author, particularly someone who doesn't yet have a platform, if the quality isn't there. So this has to go on top of, perseverance also includes honing your craft and making sure each manuscript is better than the last. So I just don't want people to read perseverance as being, just keep on querying. At some point, evaluate the quality.
I mean, so to quote the Lady Spice Girls, you got to know the rules if you want to play the game.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think Jacqui calling me out is right in that you have to do the work. You have to study the craft and read a lot and learn how to write. I mean, it's not something everyone can just pick up. It's a skill. It's a muscle.
I was going to say, I'm going to stop you there for that moment and be like, it is something everybody can pick up because it is a skill you can learn.
Yeah.
Everybody can be a writer.
I mean, it's not everything. It's not something everyone can just pick up and then they're an amazing writer. You have to flex the muscle.
Oh, even the amazing writers, even the ones that are like, quote unquote, I sold on my first debut. By the time those manuscripts get to us, those have been drafted, like rewritten, drafted, worked on so many times. And then think about the amount of times we as an agent do that before we ever send it to the editors. And then the times the editor sees. So by the time it ever actually reads readers, like, you got the love of revision is an important skill set to cultivate.
Jake says hello, and I want to give a special shout out to Jake and let you all know we had a Jake cake on our retreat.
Was it the Amanda Dean cake?
No, he did not make them. There was a specific request for chocolate cake, and he made the absolute best to die for chocolate cake with chocolate mousse and chocolate buttercream, and it is everything you ever wanted in a chocolate cake. And yes, they taste as delicious as they look on his Instagrams, Twitters, all his pictures. So
actually, now that I think about it, Jake, can you send me the recipe or how you put together the Amanda Dean cake? Because Anne is having a launch in LA and I want to get the cake that Amanda Dean bakes. Johnny Compton had an event in LA and I got a huge sheet cake with his cover on it. And people loved it. And I was the hero of the night. Do you ever get to the point where you have contacts that you call and say, yes, send the manuscript over?
Yeah.
That they say yes and send the
Yeah.
I
would
think
say these
all
are
of us
also
do.
Yeah, but these are the contacts that, like, let's also be real, that we're probably texting offline and being like, hey, did you see that pickle recipe I sent you? Or be like, you know, things like that. Like, these are the ones that you go get a beer with and are okay gossiping with. They're not necessarily just the ones you have.
I do have to say, though, I do have to share an anecdote that there was this very specific manuscript that I was trying to sell a couple of years ago. And it was just very specific. It was very niche, and everyone loved the writing, but couldn't see the market for it. But a bunch of editors were doing what Nat was talking about. They were, you know, they had their little text groups, and someone told the perfect editor in the perfect region. And she's like, I want that book. How do I find out who the agent is? And they came to us and we sold it to them. It's just a small regional publisher, but it was completely grapevine editors chatting.
Yes, that's the person at Kismet of when this happens. Like, of just the channels of like, hey, I know somebody. Let me just talk up this book that I lost, and then that person goes and emails the agent and is like, hey, I heard good things about this book. So yeah,
and that's something editors have to keep in mind or have to keep home to is their contacts. Like, we get emails from new editors all the time saying, hey, I'm acquiring this stuff now. Let's talk. I just got something from an editor who's back from maternity leave, which I feel bad. I did not know they were on. Thanks for the insights and thank you for the snack idea. Anne says you're welcome. So when do you get? You're welcome. When do you give up on a manuscript? I don't want to answer this because I don't know.
Can I ask a clarification question? Because, you know, I'm a lawyer and words matter and I am confused. Are you saying, Helen, when should the author give up or when would an agent give up?
I have the perfect answer for this, and it's the most annoying response that I ever heard as an assistant, but every book is different. Every book is different. Every book is different. And that
I disagree.
True. No, every book Lane is different. So that's the unfortunate, sad answer to whether it's an author or an agent is every book is different. And
Helen said author.
Yeah, she meant when should an author give up?
Oh, then I'm taking myself out of that answer. I'm not an author.
I mean, and if we're talking about when should an author give up on querying, I mean, again, Nat's right. Like, every book is different. Every project is different. Sometimes the timing in the industry isn't right. Sometimes it's not it's not just like saying giving up, but it's like just maybe putting it away for a little while. So, like, I have projects that I've gone out on submission with that have maybe languished for a while, and then, you know, a new editor comes or a new imprint comes, and then we bring out the manuscript again. So in my world, like, nothing is ever completely given up on. It's just maybe taking a little rest for a little while.
I hate to say, because people are going to be using this against me, I hate to say I agree. I do think there are some books that just need to be shelved, but I do think there's other books that, you know, linger and then you sell after a year.
Or 4 years.
Or 4 years.
In some cases.
Jake, I read a very early copy of Amanda Dean. I laughed out loud. I cried. I had heart-to-heart moments with myself. But I don't know how to bake a cake.
This is the perfect cake for you then, Lane. You can bake this one.
Yeah, exactly. Most traditionally are category, which are sexual, which I don't want to write. Books like Red, White, and Blue. No, I think male romance can be single title. I think.
I was reading that as mass market. Mass market romances.
Oh no, that's male. I think. Yeah, I assume. What type are publishers looking for romance?
Yeah, it's related to the other question. Like I said, it depends. I'm gonna answer that like it's mass market. It really depends, because Red, White, and Royal Blue is not a mass market romance, but like Julia Quinn is a mass market romance, and there is the sexually explicit scenes are a hallmark of that category. Whereas Red, White, and Royal Blue falls into what, quote unquote, the new adult category by St. Martin's Press and is closer to a YA. So I think it just depends on the category.
Hey, thank you all for your time. Is it generally frowned upon to when I put up a question, does it appear on everyone else's screen? Yep. Even the people viewing? Oh, that's why I'm putting it up there. That's so I do think it's kind of a boo-boo to query two different novels at the same time, because what happens if an agent offers on one novel and a different agent offers on the other? I know a lot of people do this because I get a lot of queries about it, but that's just my feeling. And I have a sense Natasha disagrees with me.
I mean, it's not necessarily frowned upon. It's not like the agent people are going to go get mad about it. The uncomfortable rub that happens is, like Lane said, if you offer on one, and then I've had it where people have come to me and said, hey, you have this manuscript, but the other one got an offer. Will you read the other one? And then it's like, I'm in the middle of the one that you queried. And then it's like, I have to pivot and restart. And I'm a slow reader for publishing. And so it causes problems, and you might end up getting passes. But I also rule of thumb, if it's been on sub for a year, there's no reason you can't move to the next one and see what happens. And then, take a break from the one from 2023. Like, you never know.
Well, that's different if you're actively querying one and sending out another. But if you stop querying one and send out another, I think that's fine.
Yeah, but even actively querying, like, I personally wouldn't think that that's frowned on. It's just, you might end up having a situation where you get an offer on it, and then your other people are like, sorry, I didn't have that one, or whatever. But I don't think it's frowned on. There's very few things I frown on in the querying process.
Yeah, I would agree with Nat. Like, my thing is, I just don't necessarily have time. If I have the manuscript that doesn't have the offer, and that's the problem. So if there's agents that you really want to work with, it might almost be better to sort of, pull because after a year, like, if no one's offered and it's outstanding with, I don't know, 10, 20 more people, and you just leave it with those people, but maybe withdraw it from anyone you really want to work with, and then just start querying the new one, because you don't want to miss out on the person you really want to work with because they have the older manuscript.
So the point is, I frown upon it and no one else does.
Well, you don't have to frown upon it. You could just cast an askance type of view and not actively frown.
That you're like the cranky pants here, yeah. And like that's the reason why. That's what we're.
Kelly is so nice.
I think the key is just be aware that there could be pitfalls with that strategy. And, if you do it and somebody offers, just be very transparent.
And could I say something else? Because I'm just like, people hold agents up on a pedestal like we're gods or something. It's like, who cares if we frown on something? If Lane frowns on something, he may not be the right agent for you. It's like, do not put 100% stock in everything we say, because it's all personal. We're just humans.
I'm just a single dog mom trying to make a living and keep her dog in high value treats, y'all. Like, don't put me on a pedestal. I'm just trying to survive in this post
pressure.
World.
It's too much pressure.
It's too much pressure. My dog eats too many treats.
Ooh, what kind of treats? I'm curious.
He really loves duck jerky and pork jerky, and the sweet potato ones wrapped in duck. My dog is bougie, y'all. Like, super bougie.
Right. I'm at the beach. What's your top pick for summer read this year? Anything not by, I can't believe I forget her name. The Summer Beach Queen that all her books take place
Emily
on.
Henry.
No, Nantucket.
No. Oh.
Ellen.
Jennifer Weiner? Ellen Hillenbrand?
Yes, Hillenbrand. Anything but her. Oh, I probably shouldn't have said that, but it was.
I'm gonna be controversial and say I don't read books at the beach. I don't like the idea that sand can get in my Kindle or on my my books. So I'm not a book beach reader, but I would say if you're looking for like escapism, I highly, highly recommend The House on the Cerulean Sea. Like, freaking love that book. It was like a cozy hug. Yeah.
That would be a great one for the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was also thinking of one of my agent siblings. A Summer of Broken Rules would be a good beach read.
Watching Quelly Query kind of just completely changed how I query. I kind of feel sorry for those Asian queries. It's all Anne Rose, and Jacqui.
Occasionally me, but then we just talk about lizards and breakfast cereal.
Breakfast cereal.
There was that one where. Am I imagining this where we were talking about breakfast cereal because one of your contacts was saying that she watched it over breakfast?
Oh, yes, Linda Addison. Shout out to Linda Addison. I love her. She's amazing. She watches it for breakfast while she's having her cereal. That was the conversation. Horror is huge. Yes, it is. What do each of you look for in the genre in 2025? Monsters, more scares. So I think I might be, actually I'm not, because Anne has done horror and Jacqui has done horror. Yeah. So I'm curious. I'm going to shut up. I want to hear your thoughts.
Anne?
I mean, I'm always looking to be surprised. I just kind of lost out on one that is just the most... it was so bonkers, but I'm so still obsessed with it. I'm wishing the author all the best. I know great things are coming for them. And if they're listening, they know this is them. So, I don't know, just be creative. Like, don't be afraid to just get weird on the page. I'm looking for some weird stuff, I think.
I like weird. I agree with you. I realized, because I didn't realize I was actually repping horror until Lane asked about that. And I'm like, yeah, actually, I have a couple of gothic horrors, but all of mine, the few that I have, are really girl power horrors. And a lot of them are historical. So there are periods where, women are kind of the underclass, and the women in my clients' books tend to do, come out of their shells and do really cool and unexpected things. And in one of them coming out fairly soon, there's a vampire, and vampires are back. So, I've always been here for the vampires, even when vampires weren't a thing. Just send me some vampires.
I'd like to see vampires. And I don't have any horror on my list, though I would very much be up for it, particularly in middle grade or YA. I think one reason why I like horror is because it shows, the world's kind of scary right now. And I think it gives people ultimately, you can have the power to survive that and achieve, or not, or maybe you die by the end. But if it's kidlit, you probably don't. You probably survive and you come out stronger. But I'm here. I think vampires are back, but I would love to see them different, surprising, at least in YA and middle grade. Monsters as well. I think monsters, they need to be different than we've seen before. How you do that twist, have fun with it.
Yes.
I have a client in middle grade doing a fantastic Frankenstein-y thing, but it's contemporary and it's kidlit and it's just so unbelievably creepy. And I don't even think of myself as liking that kind of thing, but it's so good. So yeah, surprising.
Yeah. I would say for me, horror is not something I tend to read that much. I didn't even think I was a horror reader until a client pointed out, she was like, yeah, you did. And Lane and I have gotten into many stern words about the fact that I call it elegant horror. But I tend to favor books where the horror is off page, and it might be body horror where things are erupting out of people's eyeballs and skins and jawbones, or dismemberment, but it's all off page. so I don't know if honestly if I would even find a horror that I would want to sign and work on because I don't read it nearly enough. But to echo everybody else on vampires, like I feel like what we need in that space is almost like a comedy humor approach for it, and like looking at the ridiculousness. Like because we always have the ghost books where it's like an 1800s woman, and I'm like, where's the 2017-year-old girl who OD'd in the middle of the dorm and now waking everybody up at 3 a.m. going, it's Britney, bitch, and stuff like that. Like I need the more humorous approach to like examining the kind of weirdness that is monsters. Like I want to take things in a different direction the same way Kelly did, but I might not be the horror person here.
Elegant horror is, it's like saying regular horror is stupid and gross and icky, but I mean, there's stuff that is, there is stuff that isn't horror, but it is. Like there's this movie La Llorona, I forget what it's from, somewhere in South America, and it's really just this court case about this former leader who committed genocide, and he thinks he's seeing a ghost, but that has really nothing to do with anything, and it's really very much a horror, despite the fact it's really just a family drama, just like Hereditary. But that's horror. It's not elegant horror, it's horror. Anyway, we're going to get into an argument, so I'm moving on. Do you have spidey senses for when a query is going to get taken on? It is spidey sense for when a book is going to get accepted by a publisher, or is it always just the toss-up?
Nat has totally cracked this.
I mean, I don't know if I've cracked it, but...
No, you have, because you just have lots of guacamole.
Yes. We feed the publishing gods by eating tons of guacamole. There is that. I would say there are times when I've been surprised when a book sold, and then there are times when I felt it in my gut when we were working on it, and I was like, this is going to hit differently. This is going to hit. So I would say it truly changes based on, again, every book is different. But I think there are times you can get surprised. There are times you get annoyed when the book doesn't sell and you're like, what the hell happened here? And then I think there are times when you feel it in your gut and you're like, this book feels differently. And it like Kelly just had that recently where she was like, this is gonna make waves. Like, I think we all have had that. Lane had it with the Spite House. I think we've all had those moments where we were like, this book hits differently. So.
Anne?
No, I think you guys covered it.
I think the times I get really upset is when you know that a book is you have that spidey sense and then it doesn't, and you're like pulling out your hair because you're like, this project could change the world. Why is it not?
Yeah. Thank you for my query conundrum. Please don't guess which one. It was bad. I don't even remember any that we've gone over. I just remember there's a middle grade fantasy somewhere. Hi, Sarah. Sarah's having an amazing week. They are amazing. Do you have a recommendation for screenwriting software? Final Draft. I mean, that's the classic. People have moved on to other stuff, but Final Draft. That's it. Jake. Hi, Jake. That's Sarah saying that. Jessica Streamer. What? Jessica Streamer. Thanks for the answers. You're welcome, Sean. So back to elegant horror. What do you think is elegant horror, Natasha? And what's not elegant?
Well, I mean, for me, when I think about it in terms of like elegant horror, like the Wilder Girls, the Grave Year, the Grace Year, like those are, in the moment, I was like, I don't think those are horror. But after the fact, I was told like, yeah, that's horror, because in the Wilder Girls, like they literally are trapped in an island in a boarding school, and all the girls are erupting. It's basically a virus that's causing them to mutate. So like it hits those classic horror things, but then when you're reading it, it doesn't feel like horror to me. I could be wrong. And then the Grace Year, which is it's not really a psychological, it's more like societal horror and stuff. Like I don't know if you all have read The Grace Year. It's epic. Please read it. I'm going to spoil some things for you now. They basically, again, put these girls in an encampment, an isolated encampment, and psychological stuff happens. I tend to like the ones where they get like isolated and stuff happens.
So it sounds like quiet horror.
Yeah, I'm going to call it elegant. It sounds fancier.
Sigh.
Anne gets me. It sounds fancier.
It's all in the branding. It's all in the branding.
See, I can get branding, but I mean, it's just the elegant horror. It's like Get Out. That wasn't. It was, people said it was a comedy, said it was horror, and that's what people consider elegant horror. They think like about social issues.
How is that a comedy?
Yeah, I know. You're telling me. Ooh, what is our wish? The cake question, Jake. Thank you. So for nonfiction, I want something with sharks. Sharks, please. Shark scientists. I tried to get so many shark scientists to write books, but they're all too busy out being shark scientists on the ocean and all that jazz. For fiction, it would be Elma Katsu's The Hunger. I didn't do it.
I was going to say, don't all go at once, y'all.
Well, I want the perfect twisty mystery. I want something that keeps you guessing, and they tend to be one-off books by people who write lots of books, but things like the Lucy Guest book that was actually good. Like, she's written a bunch of them, but not Lucy Foley, the House Guest one, that was really cool. And Gillian McAllister's, I'm going to get all the names wrong place, wrong time, or whatever it was called. The ones where you know how it's got to work out, but you can't figure out how it's going to get there, and you can't stop turning pages.
So I would love a heist. I've been asking for this forever and ever. I just think it's just something that you could comp with Six of Crows. I've still haven't read a heist that can stand up to that one. I also would love a ghost. This could be weirdly specific, but a ghost story set in kind of an opera house or an old theater historical. I think it would be neat. Kind of fan of the opera vibes. So those are two things that I would be very excited about. Also, just a fun contemporary adventure story. So not a contemporary book that is wrapped up in issues, but something that's kind of light and adventuresome. Again, that could comp with Outer Banks. This is all kidlit, YA that I'm talking about here.
Outer Banks, the TV show?
Yeah.
That was a great show. I was so sad it got canceled. And Natasha?
I mean, how do you pick just one?
Well, you're Ren Fair.
But I'm like,
a mermaid.
Cake book. What's your cake book?
I guess at the moment, if you asked me, I would take any of y'all down for the Lady Whistledown meets Sex Lives of College Girls. And I feel like when I say this, people are like, I don't know what this means. But so when I was in college, I was in an all-girls dorm, and there was something called the VZ Vajayjay that literally was put into the bathroom stalls. It was written by upperclassmen anonymously. And it was like a mixture of sex tips, hygiene health, gossip from campus. I went to a small school that was 1,000 kids across all 4 years. And so I kind of want that kind of thing, but in YA, and I want it sex education is not what it should be in this country. And so I kind of want a book that uses that Lady Whistledown approach to address these kind of things. And that's if you ask me in this moment. I'm sure it'll be tomorrow a very different answer.
You see, I read this question so differently. It says, you get to ask the writing world for one manuscript wish. My one manuscript wish is that I sell every single manuscript that I submit. Hello.
Did I totally misread this question?
We all did, but
We just spent like an hour talking about the wrong thing. That's
I
hilarious.
mean, but at the end of the day, you're also probably speaking to the same wish we all have.
I know.
So,
Yeah.
like,
Since I wished it, I guess I get to have that one, right?
Yeah. Victoria, a freshwater bug scientist, be close enough. Yes. Especially since in LA, Anne is going to have bug cookies. Sarah most wants a high interest speculative concept with upmarket writing like Alex Harrow or Addie LaRue. What is high interest speculative?
I'm gonna say, Sarah,
Sarah,
you're sounding like an editor right now when you're like, I want writing who is good. Like,
yeah, high
be
interest
specific,
speculative.
Sarah.
I have no idea what that means, Sarah. Help us out here. I'm stupid. I can't figure out anything. How do you match acquisition editors to manuscripts for submission? That's a good question. Is it based on genre alone? Do editors have a MSWL? I have a lot to say, so someone else start.
I mean, they do have an MSWL. They tell us what they're looking for, but it's also a sense of like, you don't want to give them what they've already bought. You also want to get to know them as people so that maybe there's an interest that they don't tell people publicly that you know as their friend, or something about them that you know that you can not exploit, but connect the manuscript with. I think sales, one of the things when we always talk about sales is really a people job. It's about learning people, learning what they want, learning what they like, the weird things they don't even know they like. And so it's mixing all these various places together, but also that thing you can't quantify that this editor is going to connect to the sad boy because she's a John Green fan, and like she's almost always going to connect to that. Or this editor is obsessed with wacky humor because when you look at her catalog of books she's published, there seems to be that through thread. So yeah.
Jacqui?
Oh, I thought you were going to go on a diatribe, Lane, but
no, that's why I said everyone else go first, or I at least said someone else go first.
Well, I very much endorse and agree with everything that Nat said. And one thing I really like about agenting is it really is kind of like matchmaking. It's kind of like getting to know people, and I enjoy books and I enjoy people. So I get to, and I was actually just thinking about, my client, Marcy Rendon, who has various mystery series, but she has a new book coming out with edited by Jenny Chen at Bantam. And I mean, Jenny and I have worked on Marcy's books, and Jenny was always a fan of Marcy's, but through Marcy, I got to know Jenny's tastes. And then I had another book that I was going out with also a native crime writer, but very different. So the second one is more of a police procedural. It deals with some similar themes, but in a much more, I don't want to say lighthearted way, but it really is a sort of a cop buddy cop feminist thing. And I just reached out to her and I said, this is a little different to what your taste usually is, but what do you think? You want to have a look? And she was like, yeah, I'd love to have a look. And she ended up buying it, but it was like, it's just you get to know people and know their tastes, and we talk to them, and we have Zoom calls with them and see them at conferences, and that's to me that's the fun part. That's the fun part of it.
I will chime in. That's also the part that you can easily get caught in a rut in, because your taste, you have editors in the business that your tastes align with. And then the problem is that then you're like, okay, I got to break out of always sending this to this person because they get me. They can't buy every single book I send them. I think Jacqui's right. That's part of the best part of this industry.
Kelly, Anne?
I think there's really nothing to add. I think you guys have really covered it very well. So I'm curious what, Lane, your rant is to add more to that.
Well, it's not such a rant. I guess I just have lots of thoughts, and basically Jacqui and Natasha stole them all. But I mean, like when we go to LA, we just hang out. You just want to talk to people or gossip. And I think, as weird as it is, it takes a lot of research and seeing what they've bought in the past and how something relates but is different. And thank goodness editors have MSWLs, however opaque they are.
But I think LA is a great example of that, right? When we go out to LA, I may not necessarily know what they've worked on, but I try to get to know them as a person. And I'm going to shout out here to Dan Kavanaugh over at Vertigo. Like, Vertigo is Dan. A better fit for Lane, but Dan and I have a similar taste when it comes to like his personal work and my own work. And so like there's those moments when it's like, okay, if Dan ever leaves Vertigo and goes somewhere else, maybe I need to keep that in the back of my head that like, hey, he might respond well to this project, And so like it's also not, it's not constantly looking for that sale. It's looking for that information that you can take long term in that relationship.
We love Dan Kavanaugh, and there's some editors or producers you're friends with and talk to all the time that you never sell to.
Yes. Yeah.
Mary Jane Skulke and I know each other and have tried to get stuff, and she's never bought anything because whatever. But I mean, it's just, I'm rambling, but that's the way it is. C'est la vie. Do you like prologues? And if so, is it okay if they are small, like a paragraph? Prologues, I mean, why? Personally, everyone else is going to disagree with me, but why take the chance? Because some editors see prologues and move right over them. Why not just call it chapter 1? That's what I
No.
See, I knew.
It's a duck. You cannot change the duck if it is a duck. You cannot call it chapter 1 because it doesn't fool anyone, Lane. You get to chapter 2 and you go, oh, it was just a prologue.
Okay, so what's a prologue then? Define a prologue for me.
It's a prologue is something that is information that the reader needs before the start of the actual story that the reader has to have. So it has to serve the story. It has to have a purpose, and it generally doesn't always immediately start the book. So it's either like there's different types of prologues. Like someone might use a prologue as something that happens later in the book. They bring it into the beginning. So it's kind of like a hook that helps lead you through to the end. So there's lots of different parts, but it has to serve the story. There has to be a purpose for it. Okay. And I cannot call it chapter 1.
You haven't defined a prologue. Well, from my understanding, a prologue has to be someone who's not the main character. But that's just a made-up thing I read somewhere.
Well, and I will say the problem is that they're overused. Like the one I'm thinking of immediately in my head when Anne started talking about like a prologue is something that has to be in the story. A great example of a bad prologue is actually Twilight.
I was going to say that.
Yeah,
I was too.
You don't need that prologue. The only thing it does is kind of makes you think you know what's going on as you get into this book. But at the end of the day, she could have killed that prologue and the book would have been fine without it. Like I think,
yeah. The reason why prologues are so hated by editors and industry professionals in general is because readers tend to skip over them. They don't read them. So a lot of times, if you are writing a prologue, then it's usually for your own use to get you into the story as the writer. And at the end of the day, cut it. Your question is it okay if it's small, like a paragraph? So my recommendation would be to not include that in your query, and it probably wouldn't get included in your package to the editor. And then once you are finalizing your book, that can be a conversation with your editor if you feel like it's important enough to add. But if it's just small, like a paragraph, I'm not sure that it's going to serve you or your story in the long run. It could.
To go off of that is that if you can leave it out and you can keep continuing with your story and everything works and the reader is fine and blah 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 blah, then you don't need it anyway.
Right.
Or change it to chapter 1.
No.
No.
Or
Paragraph
if you cannot do that, if you need the paragraph, if the story does not make sense otherwise, then that is a prologue that serves the story. See?
Yeah.
So.
Well, and then I feel like the problem we also see a lot with prologues is that you're undercutting your own tension when you put it in there. You're putting in there the moment when the girl is finding out who the killer is or is getting hunted in the woods. And then we're back jumping in time to the start of the story. And now I have to read like amount of time before we get back to this high tension moment. And it's like, you're undercutting your own story by doing that. So yeah, most of the time.
Well, not always. That's just one device that can be used in a prologue, right? Like not all prologues are like that. So
yeah, but I think that's also that's why we have these bad examples, because that's what we see constantly. And so it's the rare book that actually needs a prologue.
And could I just say, as a corollary to Nat's point, because Twilight is the one I use, and that's exactly what you were talking about, the girl being hunted in the woods or in a barn or a silo or wherever she is. But the way that prologues are often used badly, and yes, it does undercut the tension, but it can also be a sign that you know that you're starting your story in the wrong place and your first 10 chapters are really boring. Because if Twilight did not have that prologue, it's a kind of boring girl who's going to Forks to hang out with her dad because her mum's getting married or like whatever's going on. It's not that interesting. So it's kind of making this promise that if you stick with it, it's going to get more interesting later. And to me, with new writers, it's often the case that they put in this really exciting prologue from later in the story because subconsciously they know that their first chapters aren't cutting it and they're starting their story in the wrong place.
I feel like this is another thing we can do a literary lens episode on.
I think that's
when
a great idea.
Use a prologue and when you shouldn't.
Someone slack it to me, please, and we'll get to it.
I'll take care of slacking it. I feel like that's Anne's way of being like, we're getting off topic.
Is it?
I don't know. It's just a joke.
Is it harder to get an agent or to sell a book once you have an agent? Ooh, I get to quote a statistic that I don't know if it's absolutely true or not because I read it somewhere, that 5% of people can get an agent and 1% of people can sell a book. And everyone's
1% of the people who get the agent or 1% of the universe of people?
Say it again.
Good question. I don't know. I assume 1% of the universe. because when we sign a client, we sell them. You know what I mean?
I would believe.
It's that numbers game, y'all.
Pyramid. The pyramid. 5% of people who query get an agent, and of that initial group, 1% of those people get a book deal. I believe that. I don't believe that 1% of agented people get a book deal unless a lot of people are signing with schmagents who don't sell anything.
Yeah.
Oh, true. But I think you're right that it's 5% people who query get an agent and 1% of whatever you said get a book deal. Unless anyone disagrees with me and wants to call me out. Say you send a query and y'all ask for 3 chapters. What if the story reel picks up in chapters? See, I was thinking that. I was thinking that.
This is exactly what I'm trying to say about prologues. I once had someone query me and their pages started on chapter 16 and the query said, the action really starts in chapter 16. And I'm like, if you know that the action starts in chapter 16, you should not be querying it like this.
The best advice I ever heard from an author who is published, they told me, your first chapter should establish, basically, it should be essentially your thesis statement for the whole book of what you're going to be doing. And all of the not all the characters, but a lot of the stakes should be in there already. A lot of the character fears, why the character is afraid they're going to lose something or they need to gain something. All of that should be set up in the first chapter. And so if I have to read till chapter 4, as a reader, when I audition books that I'm reading for fun, I only read the Kindle sample. If I don't finish the Kindle sample, I'm not paying the money to buy the book. And so if your book doesn't start till chapter 4, we're already done. The Kindle sample is only 10%. It's less than
And you
10%
don't have
sometimes.
that luxury with readers. You just don't. A reader's not going to say, oh, well, let me see if it picks up in chapter 4. Editor is not going to give you 3 chapters. You need to start, right out the door. Every single page needs to be interesting.
Yeah, I get so many queries saying, oh, well, the action really starts here. So like, well, okay, then start the book there. Follow up to the prologue question. Do you have any well-known published examples of prologues you think worked really well? No, because they all became chapter 1s. Mic drop.
They don't always become.
Well, Twilight worked. I mean, it's the exception that proves the rule, right? But I think they often work well in speculative and historical when you need a little bit of scene setting. I have one of my clients' books, Lynn Miller Lockman's Torch, doesn't actually have a prologue, but it has a real newspaper clipping from the time that sets the scene and the time and place. LA Times Book Award winning title, Torch, because you sort of need, it's in Czechoslovakia in the late 1960s. You just need a little something to sort of, and I mean, she could have done it without that too, but it was just, that's where I've seen them be just helpful to orient the reader, but I haven't seen great ones.
I would say a really great one off the top of my head is Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson.
Oh yeah.
You need that, and I mean, it could be essentially a first chapter to unfortunately undermine my point. But you need that setting in that historical setting with that character and those little interstitial things leading into the main story of that you're actually getting into. So I feel like that's a really great example of a prologue that you couldn't have that book work as well without it.
She does that in a couple too, I think. She, outside of that 3 arc in her later ones with those characters, she does the same thing, and it has to. Yeah, you're right.
So I actually recently have been working on a class on prologues. Not a class on how to write them, but it was a part of a class I was giving to prologue or not to prologue. And I had a long conversation with Kekla Magoon about this because I know in her book, The Summer of Styx Malone, which is one of my favorite books, and her chapter 1, to me functioned kind of like a prologue. And she said originally it was actually chapter 3 of the book, and then she moved it to chapter 1. She never had a prologue, but there's a little bit that she wrapped up, so it kind of functions similarly to a prologue. But she said, this is just from what she said, and I think this is an example of a prologue that's done well. She's not opposed to prologue. She tends not to use them because most readers skip them. And you'd have to have a compelling reason to break something out like that into a prologue. But she has a prologue in her finished book of X. I don't know if you guys have read X. And she said, though, that she wrote it after the fact, after the book was done and with her editor, and it's a complete scene. So I don't know. This is just what I would recommend. If you could not use a prologue, then don't use a prologue. But check out X.
I have 2 things. One, Lane, you're giving really bad advice, and
Yes.
if
Am I really?
I know that you're trying to be funny, but we're here to help authors. And
I'm actually,
it's terrible advice. I'm here to.
Is
tell
it really?
And pulling out the mama
terrible advice.
Is it really? Because
Yes.
I really,
It is
I'm
a
not
bait
trying to be
and-
funny.
it
I
is.
really believe that.
It's a
why
bait and
use a
switch. Okay, so
prologue?
so someone writes a prologue with a totally different character, totally different era, totally different scene, 10 years before. You read chapter 1, by chapter 2, you're 10 years later in a different point of view, and then you think it's a bait and switch. You're like, what the fuck is this story?
Not only that,
it is not a good idea. If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it is a duck. Do not
To
try
also-
to not make it a duck.
Okay,
To
I'll give
jump
you
on
that.
Anne's point about that too, you're also sending the wrong message about what your book is going to do, because then I'm thinking, oh, this is a multi-POV, multi-timeline book, and I should expect to see this
Right.
first chapter character timeline popping back up. Kate Morton, the Australian author, I love her. She does this with multi-timelines and multiple POVs, and you expect it. And that's the thing. Your first chapter is setting up expectations for your reader of what to go into this book doing. And if you give a prologue as a first chapter and then never again, you've pissed off your reader.
Okay,
Yes,
you got me. You got
And
me.
then to follow up, I just read 7 Year Slip by Ashley Poston.
Poston?
And she has a little prologue in there, and I think that's effective for the story because you don't quite get into the apartment and what it's capable of until a little later on. So I think it helps set expectations for speculative elements that are come.
In speculative books, I think in mysteries and thrillers, if you get a little blip of the POV, maybe of the villain or something that's coming up, there are times when it can work. But again, I think those are decisions that you can make later on in the editing process.
Yeah.
Okay, you've convinced me. I agree. If you had to choose an anthology topic, Anne, what would it be and why? Could you have a YA or middle grade anthology? I feel like that's not as common. YA anthologies are common. I don't know how common anthologies are, but YA anthologies are no big thing. I don't know about middle grade anthologies.
They've tried them. They never really make what's big in middle grade right now is getting popular authors to all write a chapter of a story that's kind of interconnected.
Interesting.
So it's not really an anthology. It's still a complete story, but everybody writes a different chapter of it. And then YA, they kind of, there's waves of interest in them every now and then. Like during and directly after the pandemic years, they were common. I think people had shorter attention spans, so the short stories were welcome. But I don't know, Jackie, what do you think? Because I know that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think I was thinking of the Candlewick Rural Voices anthology, which was 2019. It was right before the pandemic, but it was kind of experimental. There had been like essay, like YA middle grade crossover, like groups of authors writing essays about being a kid or high school, but, with smaller publishers. So I think you're right. I think they go in waves. They tend to be thematic and they tend to reflect something that's in the zeitgeist, like a particular cultural group or a particular moment or topic.
Yeah.
I've sold like 3 or 4 anthologies this year, which is amazing. And Anne and I were just talking about anthologies. And I think it, like Jackie was saying, it kind of has to be niche, but with broad appeal. Like Cynthia Palaio's Latinx horror. It's a very niche, as in narrow theme of Latinx horror that delves into setting, history, family, but that's in a broad appeal. It's horror, so people are going to read it, just like Never Whistle at Night, which was indigenous crime, dark fantasy horror. And Becky Spratford's is a nonfiction collection about why I love horror by the biggest names in horror. So I think you really need one of those narrow themes that people are going to want to read about. Maybe that sounds stupid saying it out loud, like duh, but I think that's what I'm saying. And Zoraida Cordova had a YA anthology, and I think Circe, Nat sold a YA anthology to Chicago Review Press.
Yep.
Natasha?
Yep. I'm nodding along like, yes, that did happen.
Well, I know it happened, but I wanted you to talk about it. Do you think that's like YA anthologies are gone now? Or
I don't think they're gone. I think they're not. I would really need to see the numbers on them because we've had YA romance anthologies, we've had meet cute ones, we've had all kinds of them. What I feel like we really need to see, but I struggle to see how it would get done, is basically a graphic novel anthology of different graphic novel people doing a concept that's like, hey, we're all going to write a little short comic about this topic and do it in that way. Like, you know how like those little Disney shorts when they do like the Mickey short after Bluey or something and it's only like 5 minutes, like doing a little shorts of like, okay, we're going to do all this topic and we're going to have different illustrators do it. I know the Disney artists put out a self-published book where they do that. And honestly, like that's the anthology I think we're missing, is to see that graphic novel illustrative voice. So
I wonder if the Disney illustrators tried to sell it to Disney, or is it something, because that seems like it would be really cool, but maybe, I mean, I don't know anything about graphic novels, but it seems like it would be difficult.
No, they put it out as like a self-published project because all those various illustrators do their own little topic. They maybe do like 1 or 2 pages. They don't do a whole bunch. They have like a lot of illustrators. I have a copy of the book somewhere over there. Let me go find it online real fast because I'm not getting up to go find it in my office.
Okay. Yeah, I'm wearing my pajama pants. So if I stand up, you'll just see pajama pants. So I get it. Now I'm stuck on graphic novel anthologies. The Haunted States of America just published. Jessica Streamer, thank you. I'm going to look that up because that sounds so familiar. So now I have to never give my...
To nudge it back, to nudge it to answer your question, it's called When is High Moon? It was published in 2019. You can find a copy on Amazon. And it's basically a whole bunch of Disney illustrators put together this anthology.
Oh, Haunted States of America. Okay, so it's like a ghost story or whatever about each state. And it looks like it's middle grade. Age range 9 to 12. That's middle grade, isn't it? Huh.
Yep, that's middle grade.
Interesting.
What did you say that title was, Nat? I tried to look it up.
When is High Moon?
When is High Moon?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm like making sure I actually say this right. Yeah, When is High Moon?
Right. A graphic anthology. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I'm not the one to do it, but I kind of want to see a graphic novel.
I have tried to get a lot of our illustrators to do it, and
no,
they have other passion projects.
Oh, I know passion projects.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I would make a great editor for it. Be like, hey, give me a book deal. I'll go curate the different people. We'll just make it like 10 pages a person. There's maybe, 10 people involved in this or whatever. And
what if it's a single story, but like you said, 10 different people do?
The only reason I disagree with that is...
I'm just asking.
If you've seen the Bob's Burger episode where every frame was illustrated by a different person, it can get really chaotic, and it can be, and depending on different illustrators' styles, if they're not compatible, you can lose the through thread of like, who is which character, things like that. So I think it's much easier just to do an anthology of shorts versus everybody tells the same cohesive one story.
Anytime someone mentions Bob's Burger, I automatically think of that dinner, David Pascal, when you said you hated Bob's Burgers.
That was not me.
He said my entire family works on that show. And I was like, no. Natasha, that's
how
not
this
good.
Story actually went down is we were talking to a person of the Disney Corporation who basically like a head of Disney acquiring product. And I was like, I'm really excited for the Bob's Burger movie. And Lane goes, I hate Bob's Burgers. And the person goes, we produced that, right?
Is that it? Was David?
It was Elizabeth.
No,
it was Elizabeth Newman.
she never came to one of our events, did she?
We went and had at the vegan Mexican place. That's where it happened.
Man, my memory is so
Yeah.
That's a really good place. I remember you were so mad when we first went. You're like, it's vegan, and then you fell in love with it and were like wanting to move in.
I was also, I will admit to this. I will also admit to being very kind of annoyed the very first time we went, and they didn't have Coke because I was like, I need a soda to kill this headache, and they were like, we don't sell Cokes, and I was like, what do you have? I was like slightly snarky. Like everyone here knows that I rarely get that snarky, but it was like, what do you have at this vegan place? And then we immediately after that went to this other place. And I think Eric and I both did it. Like I ordered a Coke and a side of bacon. I was like, I want chemicals and meat in me.
But didn't we go back and they sold Coke?
No, we went back and I brought my own Coke in.
I do remember you having Coke there. That's like, I thought they didn't sell Coke.
I snuck it in. And it was
That's so
like,
funny.
I'm not going to lie. Y'all, I am from Texas. I really love Mexican. The vegan Mexican place in California was actually really good, but I had to sneak my own Coke in.
Elizabeth Newman knows how to pick them. She's now a manager. I forget where. Okay, we actually got a question. Does living in New York City help a writer's career, or does it not matter? Ooh. I don't want to say the wrong thing.
We should all move to New York City and go broke because we can't pay rent.
I would love to move back to New York City. But yes, Jackie's right. There have been a number of think pieces about authors quitting their day job, moving to New York, and then like basically declaring bankruptcy. So you don't need to be in New York.
I think it would make more sense for an agent or editor, but I mean, an author. Authors live wherever.
No, you can live wherever.
Didn't Ernest Hemingway live in Cuba at one point? And I mean, we don't have the best relationship with Cuba.
I was going to say, Ernest Hemingway is not a good comp for modern publishing in this way. But like,
I represent a client who lives in Milan.
Yeah, exactly. Like your own clients are a great example of this.
Yes,
like,
and I have another client who is literally adventuring in Costa Rica and through Latin America, and I'm like, it's good to hear from you. I'm glad you're still alive and you haven't fallen off a mountain. Better question, I think, for agents. Does living in New York City matter? And I'm going to say no, obviously, because I don't think any of us live in New York. And I know some of the biggest name agents don't live in New York.
Steffi lives near New York.
Yes. That's very true.
I'm of two minds about this.
Okay, I'm interested.
One, we obviously don't need to live in New York. But I think that there is an inherent privilege of when an agent lives in New York that you can just literally call up an editor and be like, hey, I want to go get coffee today. Or they had, back when I first started, they had agenting and publisher hangout meetup groups that people would just go bowling together as a group. And that does give you that soft touch element of learning about people. But I think as long as an agent goes and travels to New York and keeps those contacts and keeps, emailing, calling the people, even if they're like remote like us, like keeping in contact with people in that way. No, you don't need to live in New York. I don't think it's, but I can see why New York based agents have that added advantage sometimes.
And I used to think that until the pandemic, because now most of the editors I know either work from home or moved back home and are no longer in New York. One of the biggest editors I know, I was like, oh, I'll be in New York. And he's like, yeah, I'm not there anymore.
But it's those Hungry's assistants who have to schlep into the office, as we had a phone call earlier this week and you saw they were all in the conference room. Those are the people we need access to. The hungry assistants who are like, I'm building my list, and we don't care about the higher ups because they have their list. We want the hungry people.
I still feel bad. I made a bad joke. It wasn't bad as in bad. It was just like stupid and like not accurate. How did you become agents? Oh, I think I'm interested in both Kelly, Anne's, and Jacqui's. I already know Natasha's story. I don't know if I. Okay.
Yeah, sure. I started, and I think, I mean, there's no one route to agenting, but I think my story is pretty traditional. I started as a intern, and then I became an assistant, and then from there started taking my own clients when I joined Ravenquill with Jacqui. So yeah. Well, first a reader, and then an intern, and then an assistant, and then an agent. So it was a pretty traditional stepping stone process.
Yeah, no, I'm the same because I interned with Kelly, which is we went to the same MFA program, but we actually met through interning.
Mhm.
And then when she was assisting, I started agenting at a small agency, and then I started my own agency and called Kelly and said, "Hey, are you ready to be an agent now?" And she's like, "Well, what do you think you're doing starting an agency?" I'm like, "I don't really know, but it could be fun." And then we realized all the stuff we didn't know. And so then we talked to Lane and Nat and said, there's all this stuff we don't know. Would you like us to come and be clueless in your agency?
Is that really how it happened?
Hmm.
How long was Ravenquill around before?
That's not at all how it happened.
It's not.
Not at all how it
That's a
happened.
good story.
I was like, did we meet on day 2 of Ravenquill?
No. We started just pre-pandemic, and Ravenquill was very successful very quickly, I think largely because of when we started. We didn't have to pivot. So a lot of existing agencies, they were dealing with contracts that were being delayed. People with brick and mortar buildings, were moving out of their offices, and we were online. We were 4 agents in different cities. Everything was online. We could just be a lot more nimble. And I think
Right.
yeah, and we had some good contacts from having, all of us had been interns and assistants and agents before, so none of us were starting from scratch. But then when we got sort of towards the end of the pandemic, it was becoming clear that we could really use a bit more infrastructure because we had a lot of contracts, but we didn't have as much of the back end as we needed. So ended up being a really good synergy with Tobias, which was expanding a little bit, and it just happened to be a good fit.
Yep.
And Rose?
I feel like I've told this story like 100 times. I feel like people are bored of this story.
You told us, but I don't think you've told anyone here. There's 122 people waiting with bated breath.
Bated breath. Okay, well, it's a little bit the same, a little bit different. So years ago, 100 years ago, when I was younger, and my niece was younger, she came to me and she's like, "Auntie, will you read books with me?" And she was a very vivacious YA reader at the time, and her friends just weren't into reading. And I said, "Sure, no problem. I'll read books with you. Just tell me what to buy, and I'll read them." And so I started reading YA books with her, and they were lovely and charming. We had our own little book club and all that good stuff. And one day she calls me, and she's just crying her eyes out. She's bawling. She's like, "Auntie, my favorite character in this book died." And I knew it was coming because I had finished the book before she did. And so, of course, I did what any good auntie would do. And I said, "Don't worry, honey, I'm going to write you a book." I mean, how hard could it be? Right? So, so I started writing this book, and I was like, well, if I'm going to write this book, I should figure out what this whole thing about publishing all is. So I was working a full-time job. I got a internship with an agency, and I started interning while I was working full-time and writing this novel, and yada, yada, yada. Long story short, one day my job was eliminated, and I was like, well, I think I want to stick in this whole publishing thing. Does anyone have any connections? and someone connected me with their agent. Their agent connected me with the head of the agency, and serendipitously, I got a job. And then that's how I became an agent.
Good story.
Yes. Natasha?
I probably had the most stereotypical route of all of us here. I moved to New York after college. I got a master's in publishing, knowing that I wanted to be in publishing. I got a job first working at a medical publisher. I do not blend well with medical publishing people. Then I got a job as an editorial assistant at Simon & Schuster, and then I became an agent. And so I feel like I have the most stereotypical route that you often see, which is I was in the publishing pipelines.
I had the least stereotypical and the total opposite of Natasha. I was on Twitter and saw an agency looking for readers, and I was like, fuck, I can read a book for a living. And so I did that, interned, became an assistant, and then became an agent, and then, grew up to my own agency. Okay, any other questions? There's 127 people here, which is amazing because I don't think I know 127 people in my real life.
Yeah, but Anne does. Anne knows them all.
I do.
Do you really?
Probably.
Anne, you're so popular. Okay, final questions. We've been here for an hour and 25 minutes. I'm not seeing any final questions, so we're gonna hop off because it's 8:30 my time. So if you're on YouTube, there's the little bell that if you click that, you'll be notified of all our videos, and subscribe because we do great podcasts, and then you can submit your query for a possible chance for Anne and Jacqui and I to rip it to shreds on screen, and hopefully it's been helpful. We've heard it's been helpful, Anne, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. If you have any comments about that or opinions, we'd love to hear them too. So go ahead and leave us a comment.
Yeah, if you don't like it, let me know. I'm all ears. Okay. Bye.
Bye.